We make dental billing and insurance easier to understand. Subscribe to stay updated and help us grow the channel.
Someone was asking what an average speaker cost is for 1 hour of CE. Kind of curious to hear your experience, your opinion, and your viewpoint, because that is that whole thing, like your presentation is only 1 hour. So how much is your fee for 1 hour versus a whole day?
Yeah, it's tough. So 1 hour webinar, I can give you, the fee, for established speakers. It'll range actually from inexperienced speakers to established. It'll range anywhere from 1,500 to 2,500 for a webinar, to a 1 hour webinar, 2 hour webinar. A lot of times I'll do an hour and a half or 2 hours for 2,500. That's not abnormal. So just because you think, that sounds like, but it's not abnormal. For in person, the problem is it's 1 hour for you, but it's a whole day for that speaker. So think about a clinician traveling. That's sometimes 3 days travel, depending on where you are. That clinician is leaving their practice. And so that's why it's good to have sponsors help out. But I know a lot of dentists, clinician speakers who are easily, 6, 8, 10,000, depending on the topic. And that's why it's good to have sponsors who are partners. So I would say try not to speak for think in live events on hourly rates for speakers, because it's going to vary all across the board. Rita, what do you think? Have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would agree. I think you're going to talk to 10 different speakers and get 10 different quotes, and every speaker is going to have their different set of requirements. When you say it's just an hour or an hour and a half, for example, I just did a recent event here that was like a 10-minute drive from my house. So I cut my fee in half for them because I was like, I'm delighted to drive for 10 minutes and speak to your group. There are other speakers that are looking for, more visibility with a specific group, or they might want to travel to a specific city. I mean, there are so many different requirements and requests and goals that different speakers have. And, sometimes it can depend on whether or not they do want to kind of donate their time, if they will, to a specific group, and they have room in their heart for office managers in their community. They might be willing to do some sort of a special arrangement with them. So don't hesitate to ask, for different speakers, requirements, but just do be prepared, because you're probably going to get a big variety of different quotes.
And go in with your budget, because one of the things you don't want, and this is pretty common, speakers will come back with, what's your budget? And you have to have a budget like in mind. So start with what you ideally would want to pay. And then if they go, well, that's not really in my budget, then how can we do that? And that's where sponsors come in. A lot of times your sponsors can help you pick a speaker, take care of the speaker, fly them in, everything. Speaker just shows up and you're like, great. And the sponsor gets a table, right? They can help with CE, they can help with marketing. The other piece with speakers is you want a speaker who's also going to be okay with doing a video to promote you, or to, do sort of a post on their social media to promote you as well. Local speakers or new speakers, let me just address that real quick, because we were both new speakers too. When we were new, we had great material. So not all new speakers are like inexperienced. They may have great material, but you are taking a chance on a new speaker. In my billers membership, there's a lot of great ladies in there who want to speak, and they're newer to that, but they know their stuff inside out. Would you be able to get them for a pretty decent fee? Sure. But just remember, you're getting somebody who's more, doesn't have as many years on the road as we do. They could blow us out of the water. You're going to have to follow your gut to see if that's somebody that you want to have come talk. So if your budget is really driving the conversation, you do have options. You can go to local speakers. You can take a chance. The banks and accountants, a lot of times they'll come and speak for free because they're getting their stuff out. You just have to be clear. Don't push your sales. Like, don't be salesy. If a sponsor comes in and helps you, they are expecting a room full of doctors. So anytime you ask a sponsoring partner to pay money to be a part of your study club, there should be ROI for them. So a room full of doctors, a room full of managers, whatever it is you promised, that's why having 6 people show up, 8 people show up, those sponsors are not going to stay with you. They're not. I mean, it's a business decision. Many times the sponsoring partner will want some podium time. I'm not talking like an actual speech, but they should be able to go up and say, hey, nice to see you. We're happy to support, all that kind of stuff. And then they're hoping too that there's no competitors in the room. A lot of times the representative, if they're very outgoing, Ted from Synergy, Samir and Angela from Care Credit, they'll be happy to get up in the room and introduce people and kind of MC. So that's actually kind of fun too. And we do want to give a shout out because Care Credit is supporting this event. And for Rita and I, they have been fantastic sponsors for our programs throughout the years. So
and for dental teams and dental practices, they were one of my biggest cheerleaders working in the practice and helping me with communication and case presentation and all the things. So
yeah.
I did definitely also want to add, sorry,
yeah.
Teresa,
No,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I just think it's so important. And I feel like we're really antiquated in dentistry with this whole thing of where, for speakers, a lot of times they'll ask if we have sponsors, but they don't want us to mention sponsors. The bigger meetings are notorious for this. And it's like, at some point, I think, we're understanding that we have these sponsors for a reason. They have businesses that they're trying to grow as well. So I think definitely giving them that podium time and the opportunity to meet other people and connect is so important. And to say, just be very transparent and open and say, they're our sponsor. We couldn't be here without them, and not trying to hide that. I feel like we're really stuck in the dark ages with that, with so many meetings saying, I understand you don't want to sell from the stage, but we also want to be just very clear and open about we wouldn't be here without these people that are providing the funds for us to do this.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. That's a whole huge conversation about the meeting space in general. Like what she touched on is so important. And maybe that's a problem that you'll have down the road, right? Like something like when you get big enough, right? So one of the questions that I get when I have these exploratory calls and I say, you can get sponsors to help you out with this. And usually it's like, which sponsors? What sponsors? Do you know which sponsors? So I'm just going to have you look around today in your offices, just walk around and look at all the companies that you deal with. Think about all the sales reps that try to connect with you when you shut down. To be honest, some of those sales reps can be good partners with you. If you're a clinician, go through your inventory. Who are the implant companies that you use? Implant companies, the biologic companies, endo companies have huge budgets for this stuff. They just need to be asked. A lot of times they will bring in their KOLs, and that is a huge budget addition or budget detraction for you because you don't have to worry about that. They a lot of times will handle the speakers. That's been, I think, a game changer for dental study clubs. When that was happening, you would find like these KOLs. So you can ask your implant rep, for example, do you have any KOLs, key opinion leaders who will travel to our study club? A lot of times you don't have to do anything except just make sure that they're checked in the night before and welcome them and all that stuff. You can take a look at your software. What about the company that you use, your practice management system? AI companies, all of the imaging companies are all, their budgets are huge right now for the same thing. They want to get in front of doctors. A lot of times the big meetings don't give them enough face time. Almost every vendor that I've ever worked with will tell you that the study club meetings that are about 50 to 60 people, up to 100 is their sweet spot. They get so much more face time and they're able to really impact their sales. And doctors will buy when they trust the conversations that they're having. And doctors can then use that time to really get in there and ask questions. And that's what the vendors want. So don't be afraid to bring in all the vendors that you use, right? So look around. What about the supply company that you use that services your office? That's a good representation for clinical, but then you've got sponsors for all of it, clinical and admin. You've got, like I said, the PMS companies, the AI companies, your managed service providers, your IT company. Nowadays, there's been such a big focus on cybersecurity and HIPAA. A lot of times they will come in and do that. And, they're happy to do it for free, usually the managed service providers, because what they're going to do is get in front of a lot of people. Marketing or consulting companies, if you have a local consultant who would like to get in front of your audience, hit them up. So, hey, we are happy to have you sponsor the session. You get a table, you get to meet everyone, get the attendee list. You have to decide if you want to make that public. I do recommend that you do that because the vendors do need some way to reach out, but you have to have a very frank conversation of do not blow up their phones, like respect my people. And I've seen doctors totally just kick sponsors out of their study club because of that. Be very protective of your people. Outsourcing company, third-party billing companies that I work with in my membership, they are all starting to see if local study clubs will give them a table so they can get in front. And then CPAs, always your local CPA, ask your local CPA. Maybe they're up for it. Maybe they know somebody who's up for it. HR companies, banks, financing companies like Care Credit, just look around your office. I think if you just think of it differently, who would want to get in front of people like me? You're going to get yourself a list of companies that I think would be very happy.
If you learned something new today, subscribing is the best way to support the channel and keep learning with us.
Would you like to hear more? Follow the link for the full episode.